We have a conversation this hour about gender empowerment, accelerating gender equality and empowerment for all women and girls in Kenya. The issue of gender, especially looking at it from the gender-based violence, is a conversation that has happened in this country for many years. It's a conversation that happens at national level, at policy level, at continental level, now even at global level. And it has taken place many, many years. From your own just observations and assessment, are we making progress in dealing with gender-based violence? And this is not violence against women. It is gender-based violence. Yeah, good.
In my view, so we call it gender-based violence. And I think most victims are the women. And most corporate societies, even we now have an organization called FIDA. So mostly those who are abused are the women's side. Though we have men who are suffering from the other side, but no one is following their due causes or how they are suffering. Because majority, those who come out and those which the society looks up to when there is a violence is the women's sector. So for me, we are progressing because you cannot compare from the rural setup when we were young. We used to see our mothers being beaten by our fathers and abused as if they were children or not human beings compared to today. Today, there is a lot of civic education going on. At least right now, women have known their rights, and even when they are grieved or when they are abused in any way of either physical or mental, they now have where to report. Because the government have just devolved this function to the sub-county level. Right now, as we talk today, we have at the sub-county level, that is now the previous, we used to call it district, sub-county level. We have their offices whereby these rights are being, they are being carried on.
Progress? Zero?
Yeah, definitely progress. Are we where we feel we should be? Possibly not. Progress in terms of employment. Women in senior positions, that has increased. Maybe at the very top level, not as high, but definitely there's a deliberate effort. Women in business, also, you see more of that. But of course, there's still a lot to be done. And I don't have hard statistics, but for instance, some of the work that we do, we look at women in business, women in informal trade. And you'll find that women businesses will still perform less. So the lower income, the lower earning, like in informal trade, women will form the majority. When you look at, for instance, government procurement opportunities, a lot of the companies that go for the high value procurement opportunities are male dominated. So yes, women are, first it's good, the issue is on the table. Government has set up ministries, there's a commission and all of that. But on the ground, in terms of integrating, there's still a gap. Then also this gender function gets a lot of lip service in terms of are the resources really there for them to be able to implement. Gender-based violence, we've seen during COVID, unfortunately, very disturbing stories. Then this week again, because there's been a lot of emphasis on this, showing that gender-based violence or violence against women has increased even as the economy opens up. So it increased when it closed because of this, they were saying it's the close proximity of being in the house and also the financial pressures. But even as it opens up again, there has been a spike. And again, they are saying it comes back to the economy. So this idea that women in the household are at risk, or a number of women are at risk of gender-based violence is still a challenge. And children should never have to witness that. Whether it's violence on the woman, which is the majority, or even violence against the man, because then those children see this and they replicate it. Yep. So I think it still needs to be considered an issue and not just paid lip service. Yeah.
So a lot more effort needs to be taken into this, into addressing the issues. I think as well that yes, there's been some considerable progress that has been made. When it comes to seeing it being mainstreamed at government level, where a person as the president actually discusses the issue of gender-based violence and discusses the issues of equality. And then you see, for example, the police service and the push to have gender mainstreaming as at police level. Every police station, do you have a gender desk? Those are, they may look like small steps, but they are big steps. Because like Yagon, you're saying, presently, almost everybody is aware that this is violence, that this is an abomination, that this is wrong. So it's possible for people to raise an issue, to report this issue. It's even easier for people to report the issue, whether it's at the local chief's office, whether it's at the local police station. The issue is those that are given the duty to receive the complaints, how do they handle them? How do they handle the complaints going forward? Do they actually treat you as somebody who's been abused, or do they laugh at you? Do they, treat you with scorn? We saw the other day a story that was published about men in Kirinyaga, was it Kirinyaga or Embu, who were complaining that they're actually undergoing gender-based violence in their homes, and they cannot raise this because they go to the chief, and the chief is like, unapigwa na mama.
Wanaume wa aina gani?
Toka hapa, Yeah. So the duty bearers are the ones now that where the issue has to be. Have we really changed the attitude of the people to whom you report gender-based violence? Is there a structure of when this is reported, how do you handle it?
I think, at some point, now why we are witnessing the male gender violence now is because at the lower level, the women now are daring to go to compete with them, and to them they are now decreasing from their responsibilities. So automatically when you are no longer being responsible in your family or your house, obviously we will be abused by the other gender, because it is abdicated that the roles of a man has his roles as the head of the house, but now you have
abdicated that
yes,
role
to the
In fact, Egon, what you're saying is really true. And gender violence is about power, and it's about the abuse of power. Yes. So if you empower one gender at the expense of the other, then it will flip, where now it will be about men. And this comes out on the issue of the boy child, for instance. There's been a lot of emphasis on the girl child, which is necessary and important. But the boy child has then, in turn, also suffered. So maybe we need to also look at the social, attitudes and the social kind of values that create gender discrimination and gender violence, and deal with the root cause. Otherwise, all we'll do is succeed in empowering one gender at the expense of the other.
I think we need to normalize having balanced conversations, and I think we need to normalize having these conversations in the open, because a lot of what we see, gender-based violence is a result, and I think that's one thing we need to see. The violence is a result of attitudes that have been practiced over time. So when you see this violence coming out against boys or girls, it's the result. It's compacted attitudes that have been allowed to be practiced over and over again, and results in this kind of violence, or that results in inaction towards this violence. The chief saying, "How can you be a man if you have been beaten up by somebody?" A woman who says that a man does not love you if he does not punish you, and things like that. So the result is really not the issue. It's the underlying problems that we need to actually have. And unfortunately, a lot of these discussions are taken and had out of the public glare. In 2021, unfortunately, there are still women, mothers, who are raising their boys in a certain way, who are raising their girls in a certain way, that, if anything, are proliferating these attitudes that result in this kind of behavior. And that's why I think we need to normalize having these conversations out in the open. That when a young woman is beaten up, for example, and her elder aunties ask her, "What did you do?" Or
you must have done something.
You must have done something wrong.
There is
or that a woman has been raped or abused, and how her mentors or her mother or aunties ask her, "Where did you go?" or "What were you wearing?" that would have provoked that kind of action towards you. So do you see the end result is not the issue. It's all these
It's where it starts.
attitudes and where it has started from that need to be dealt with.
UN Women has been supporting some conversations. It's called the Generation Equality Forum. That's a global gathering for gender equality convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France in partnership with youth and civil society. This forum kicked off in Mexico in March and has been continuing in Paris, France, since the 30th of June, and it ends today, launching a series of concrete, ambitious, and transformative actions to achieve immediate and irreversible progress towards gender equality. So it responds to the fact that despite the commitments made in Beijing in 1995 to take strategic, bold action and gender equality progress, not a single country can claim to have achieved gender equality in the world. With women's rights at risk of rolling back further as a result of COVID-19, the forum is a rallying point to finally achieve the human rights of all women and girls. Our President Uhuru Kenyatta attended this forum in Paris, and he's in Paris. He's been in Paris, and he made a commitment at the Generation Equality Forum to increase investments and actions towards preventing and responding to gender-based violence. That's a key milestone towards achieving an equal Kenya. So you see, we are at a point where a president is making a commitment on this particular issue. A president has also made another commitment on the issue of female genital mutilation. All at presidential level, commitments being made on behalf of the government on we need to do something to ensure equality and to bring equality. Let's bring in a guest who's on the line. She's going to join us now. Angelina Cikanda. She's a fundraising and program development manager at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, CREW. Angelina, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Now, the president made this commitment in Paris. There have been many other commitments that have been made by governments, successive governments since 1995 on entrenching gender equality. We've been asking ourselves the question whether we've made the progress. So let's just hear as well from you. Have we made progress, or are we making progress, a meaningful progress, in getting to an equal Kenya?
Well, we've made progress. It's not enough. There's still more that needs to be done. But this is the first time that the head of state has taken bold steps towards talking about this particular issue of gender-based violence. For the longest time, it's been the purview of the civil society organizations, the social development departments within government, the legal aspects of this issue. Those are the spaces that we talk about gender-based violence. So either you're talking about cases, or you're talking about writing up stories of individuals who've had experiences of violence. But we've not had concrete political action. We have laws that talk about it and have provided for means and ways of protection. But bold steps to address the issue is still a challenge, including the fact that services are not yet where we need them to be. There are some huge gaps that still need to be addressed, especially around safety and security. And we've not seen deliberate action by government to address this issue. There has been a call to action in several platforms that we've had over time. So this, we're taking it as one of the most bold steps that government has taken to address these issues more directly and to safeguard the lives of many women, girls, and men who continue to suffer violence in the hands of family, friends, relatives out here in our community.
Okay. When these conversations started, it was not the beginning of the violence, right? The conversations and the actions which were then recommended along a wide array of, participants came at a point whereby it sounded as though it was enough. We have seen now that these issues have become worse over time. What do you think needs to be done by the different actors in all of this to get us to the point whereby this is under control?
Well, there's a lot that needs to be done. One of the things that we're trying to make sure happens is let us not shy away from this issue. Let us speak about gender-based violence for what it is. And let's not try to sugarcoat it or hide the issues behind culture, behind excuses. that seem to normalize the aspects of violence, that it's okay to be beaten and that's fine, that it is wrong to seek for help, that it is wrong to get out of a relationship. So what needs to be done is open conversation to acknowledge that indeed violence does happen in our community. Violence is hurting our people. We are losing lives. We are losing people in the name of violence. And therefore, it's time to engage. And therefore, provide platforms whereby people who are in relationships or people who are living in households where they feel unsafe, where they feel unprotected, can be able to be supported to get out of this environment. You don't have to stay in an abusive relationship, for example. You don't have to go and abuse a child simply because you have power and you're older. You don't have to go out there and have make derogatory statements about people that are false, or just bully people and harass everybody out there and think you can get away with it. The police may not catch you today, but can we have personal responsibility where everybody who sees any form of violence out here is able to seek help, is able to report, and that authorities will take the necessary action to be able to root out from ourselves these people who keep making our lives very difficult. Nobody gets into a relationship with the hope that they're going to be violated. The idea is to thrive and to be able to live a life that's fulfilling. But then things happen, and we must agree that as human beings, we may not always agree on a daily basis. It's okay to disagree, but it doesn't mean you have to engage in violence as a result. That you don't have to mistreat the other party, you don't have to insult your friend just because we did not agree on something.
Angelina.
And that it is okay not to be okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Angelina.
Yes.
First of all, congrats on the great work you're doing, very important work that needs to be done. And yes, it's extremely disturbing to see what's coming out from the pandemic. But to what extent, because you've said we can't blame culture and we shouldn't hide behind culture, but to what extent is the movement missing out on the big question of culture? Because isn't it about culture? The women's liberation movement of the 50s and the 60s was about basic rights, the right to work, right to vote. Now those have been secured, not totally, but to a large extent. Now we are talking about softer issues. I'm the mother of two Gen Z young ladies, and the conversations I hear them having and the way they relate with young men, I'm still hearing very, chauvinistic and very negative attitudes from some of the young men at that age. So the law is in place, the policies are in place. Isn't it about time we started addressing culture? And how do we address culture so that we protect women, we support women, and also make sure we protect the boy child?
Well, one of the things about culture is that culture is dynamic. It's not static. And over time, we've changed most of our rules of engagement based on knowledge and understanding that indeed this no longer holds water. So culture, for example, where you're saying that, she was abused because of her.
All right, I think we've had an issue. We're having an issue with Angelina's line.
Conversation. Just a
Angelina,
kind of conversation.
sorry,
Yes.
sorry, Angelina. I think we lost you there for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could repeat what you were saying.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that there are certain aspects of our culture. Culture is nothing, there's nothing wrong with culture, but there are certain aspects that really need to change. And some are not actually cultural, but just misconceptions that people have come to develop over time. For example, there is no culture that says if you're beaten, you need to stay in that relationship. Every culture provided for a platform whereby if you're abused or in an abusive relationship or there are conflicts within the household, there were platforms to engage. And therefore, you could reach out to a relative, an uncle, an auntie, a brother, somebody else would be out to reach out to you and see how to resolve the conflict. But the kind of society we're living today is such that you don't have those platforms. You can no longer run to your brother, you can no longer run to your auntie for support. So where is a platform to engage and address the conflict such that me as a woman, me as a man in this relationship, I can be supported to find an alternative way to address the issues? Because as human beings, we are going to, disagree on very many issues. So where's the platform to engage? Let's have that conversation and be able to provide opportunities for people, for example, to go for couple therapy, for example, if at all there's an opportunity to reconcile the relationship. If it's completely unattainable, then can we allow people to just leave a relationship and that it is okay? That nobody has to say, ndoa ni kuvumilia, be patient. He's going to change. Nobody changes because we ask them to.
Angelina, so my question to you, because I agree with you, what programs are you running, or would you like to see the government run to bring that, to take us to that level where people are going for counseling services, where families, at the family level, really there's consideration about what we are modeling, because we've had a lot of focus on the law, a lot of focus on policy, a lot of focus on setting up institutions. All this has happened. But in terms of the culture, or in terms of the values that people espouse, is enough being done? And if not, what would you like to see done to influence things from the household level?
For us, we are running programs where we have couple programs, for example, where we allow couples in conflict to come in and have conversations. Our neighbors, Rwanda, have a very good model they call Indashikirwa, and this is something you're trying to encourage our government here to adopt, whereby you have platforms within the community setting where a couple in conflict can have an open conversation together without the influence of relatives or in-laws, and simply have an independent individual to support them through the issue. So they'll be able to have this conversation about what it is that is causing conflict, what are the issues of contention, and then come up with an amicable solution where at the end of the day, everybody feels valued and respected. The president of Kagame even invested money to that program, and it's one of the models that has been awarded openly. Secondly, is having a robust system of implementing these very laws and good policies that we have, whereby there has to be sensitivity. When I tell you I've been violated, don't be insensitive and start asking derogative questions like, what were you doing? What did you dress? Rather, believe me first, listen to my issue, and then advise me on where to seek help. So if it's extreme and needs further action by the authorities, then that can be facilitated. If it's medical support I require, I can access without feeling discriminated or demeaned and made to feel that I'm inferior because I went through violence, and that it is okay to be violated, to experience violence and be unwell, but there's an opportunity to change the situation and get better. So if we welcome the opportunities for people to heal, if we welcomed and use our facilities better, to provide safety shelters for people in crisis, that would be awesome. As it is today in Kenya, if you get violated, there are not such places managed by government. All the ones we have are privately owned, and it's really expensive to maintain them. So that remains one of the biggest challenges we need to address.
Thank you very much, Angelina, for joining us. Angelina Cikanda is a fundraising and program development manager at the Center for Rights Education and Awareness, CREW. We are talking about accelerating gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls in Kenya. Have a lovely day, Angelina.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.